Okay.
Hiya.
Hello. Hello. How's it going, Will?
Is it still on?
We are live.
All right. Okay.
There wasn't any more sparklers or fireworks. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Straight into it.
Straight into it. I didn't have an introduction on this one as far as the video or anything, but yeah. But we've got 42 guests already with us.
Oh, yeah.
Watching. Going to be listening to our natterings and our tastings and hopefully tasting along. I know there was a number of boxes and a number of tasting cases sold. So welcome everybody in the chat room, on Facebook and on YouTube. Thank you so much for spending part of your evening with Will and I. I am Brett from the Wild Beer Company, and this is Will from Manchester Union.
Hello.
Thank you very much, Will, for joining.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Easy guest to have. Easy guest. But for everybody in chat, thank you very much. And it's been a crazy month since the last tasting when we did Babbling Brook, an English IPA. And it was a great response by everybody. And thank you very much. And everybody joining as well. I can already tell it's going to be a good evening just like that. So tonight we're tasting 4 different beers, and all these beers have been on our website. If anybody watching that just chiming in hasn't seen it, hasn't seen this before, the format, what we do is fairly regularly we have tasting cases available on our online shop where you're able to purchase the case, and a few weeks later we have a kind of a tutored tasting, interactive, so you can be chatting and asking questions, as well as there's a number of wild beer team members, brewers, sales team, like everybody who's involved in every aspect of the making of the beer is in the chat room answering questions as well. So that's the format, really easy, straightforward. And tonight we have special guest. And so what beer should we, well, maybe actually we can, Will, do you want to share like what order we're going to drink the beers in, and then we can crack open the first one as well?
Yeah, so I think you've rather generously given us the first beer. So it's Manchester Union Lager as the first beer. I believe we're going on to the Wild Beer Chica, followed swiftly by Wild Beer TikTok, which is the one I'm really excited to try, which is the Chica aged in red wine barrels. And then we're rounding off the night with our newly canned Wild Beer Manchester Union After Dusk, which is our black lager. But yeah, the idea of that one is just to kind of show the absolute breadth of the range that you can get in lager. Everyone always thinks that lager is quite a light tasting beer, but anyone who drinks the After Dusk I guess the opinions will change hopefully on that one.
Yeah, I just spilt some beer by accident on my battery charger.
Just for anyone who's pouring the Manchester Union, the lager, first of all, just whenever you are pouring it, make sure you pour it from a nice height. We want, like, so on this one, you do want a nice big head. The carbonation is quite low, a bit like a Central European, like a German lager. So always, just whenever you're pouring it, make sure you get a nice big head. So pour it quite swift. And get it exactly straight into the glass and give it a nice big head on it. Yeah.
So what I've seen that on the internet quite a bit recently.
Yeah.
About these, it just, at least in this country, considered a slow pour, or
yeah,
well, from a tap, it takes quite a while. What's going on there?
Well at the brewery we actually encourage a 7-minute pour sometimes, which is like we first up just pour nothing but head, not foam, into the glass. And that in that foam is where you carry all the aroma, but all the bitter aromas, and that's what's going to give the beer the balance. So in this part, we're going to see all the malt sweetness, and then to balance that out, you need that bitterness. But also, with Central European lagers, the carbonation is quite light. So this is about like 2.8 carbonation. So it is only really delicate. It breaks out in the mouth, but the carbonation should be quite light. So whenever you then drink it through the head, so you've just got like the sort of nice little caramel sweetness. We'll come on to the process in a little bit, but nice caramel sweetness, and then just balanced with the bitterness from the hops, and it's mostly aroma bitterness. So you need the aroma. So it's the head that captures and translates, I guess, all that aroma to balance out the malty drink.
Right. So we're starting with Manchester Union. Just going to hold this up, and then been already questions. So people kind of starting out with Manchester Union Lager. So, Will, what got you into thinking I want to make a lager brewery. I want to build that. Lager.
I kind of wish I hadn't sometimes. It is a challenge because like with lager brewing, with selling lager, my job unfortunately within the brewery is selling it, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Like it's I love doing what I do, but because we're constantly fighting against the big guys who own lager lines in every single pub and restaurant up and down the country, you're fighting to get a lager onto the tap, and that's quite a difficult challenge. So there was I think there was a number of reasons, but I used to run a craft beer distribution company, and all the best lagers that I was seeing in the UK was from Central Europe, and probably this is going back to like 2013, 2014, 2015, and all the mainstay lagers that you saw in a bar were all the kind of light, pale. I hate the word insipid because it sounds kind of nasty, but it describes it quite well. Quite pale, not much going on, just a fairly basic flavor. And then I think that almost encouraged the craft beer boom in a good way because people were searching for bigger flavors, better drinking experiences. So if you were faced with a choice of a big macro lager or an interesting local IPA or pale ale, then you're obviously going to go for the local IPA or pale ale, which is great, and my career over the last decade really has been craft beer, pale ales, and IPAs. But lager is such a good drink, and even it's got like a much wider breadth than even what we're probably showcasing today. There's so much more, but I guess we can come on to it as we go along. But yeah, everyone sort of discounted lager as almost like an afterthought, and even craft breweries were discounting lager as an afterthought because they were so excited about making all these other beers. So I really wanted to this is going back to, like, say, with 2015, 2016. The idea was to do like a lager brewery in the UK that really showcased good lager. Met up with my now business partner, Jamie Scahill, and he was running like a beer bar, and then we saw, he was running like an arts bar, and DJs and stuff. Actually, it was a ping pong table tennis bar with music and gigs and art and all sorts. Yeah, and then I was at a beer fest. Well, I was actually a little bit hungover one day, and I was at a bit of a brewery shindig at Blackjack Brewery, who I know you do a wee bit with as well. I was at one of their like a Sunday or like afternoon session, and I was a little bit hungover, so I didn't want to be drinking a big IPA. And I got talking to this guy who said, "Oh, my lager's on the bar," and he was only brewing on like a little 1-barrel kit. And I got talking to him. I tried his beer, and it was like a little light switch went on in my head. And I said, "How have you brewed this?" And he started talking to me about decoction mash brewing, and I'd never even heard of it at the time. And he started telling me about it, like he's got quite a scientific mind. So he started telling me from a scientific mind what he did to make beer this way. And I was just like, my God, we have to do this. We have to. So anyway, the next day I phoned Jay, said, "We've got our guy." And I was going to say the rest is history, but not really, because that started about a 3-year journey just to get the bloody brewery built. But that was pretty much the journey.
That's
I was going to say in a nutshell, but that wasn't really a nutshell, was it?
Well, that was good. I mean, you hit another question I was going to ask, which is kind of a little bit about your background before you started the brewery, and like, because I had written down like beer extraordinaire and professional for how many, I don't even know how many years you've been in the industry, just kind of talking beer, talking like hospitality and what beer can do to businesses as far as a positive thing on their business, as well as driving new flavors and experiences for their customers. But that was something I was always amazed about with talking to yourself. You always looked at beer more than just it's more than just the tick box of that a restaurant or a pub can have of it. Well, we need a beer. I'll sell it. I'll do a good job of selling it. It was always, it solves a problem. It creates opportunity of flavor and conversation for restaurants.
Absolutely.
And which I'd love to, maybe later on we hear a little bit about your new stepping into your YouTube channel and stuff like that. Real interesting. I didn't even ask you to talk about that. I forgot about that until
because I've not done any of that since lockdown. I'd forgotten about it as well. But yeah, we can pick that up as well. Yeah.
But there's been some really great comments about the beer, and one just that I picked up was very geeky sounding. Kind of, I love the viscosity of this beer, and there's something about your Manchester Union lager very reminiscent of decoction lagers that I've had. Is this big mouthfeel, big aroma, big flavor, but yet really easy to drink still. So in comparison to like a big heavy mouth-feeling ale that you can't drink a lot of. Does that make sense? You achieve something through this magical art of brewing that is heavy and rich, but yet light and refreshing.
Yeah. So I think that was, I'm just looking at that. Was that Daniel Maud said that? So I really like that question. So thank you, Daniel. That viscosity is, I did a talk actually just a couple of weeks ago, and someone said we should do it. Someone made a comment. It was another online tasting, and someone made a comment that said, "There's a drinking game. We have to do a shot every time Will says mouthfeel." So viscosity is, exactly this sort of the line that I guess we want to talk about. And for me, the mouthfeel or viscosity is perfect. So thank you, Daniel, for picking that up. But it's whenever we were looking at what lager we wanted to make, it's first of all, it's very difficult to make a good lager. I think sometimes people think it's just easy to make good lager because it's so light. But there's nowhere to hide with lager. You have to do it well. Any bad flavors are picked up straight away. So that's the first thing for me. So then once you work around that, then it's like, well, what do you want that beer to do? So the way I saw it, there was no point in us making a really light, easy drinking. So I still think this is easy drinking, but I also think it's challenging as well to certain people. But once they get over that challenge, that's it, hooked. But like whenever I look at the different brewing regions that brew nice beers. You you look at southern Germany, so down around Bavaria, and you've got like a history there of really malty beers. So there's a malty backbone to all of their beers that that is always there. And then you've got like maybe single or maybe a couple of different hop varieties to bitter it. You go across to but for me, sometimes those beers, because they only have like a single hop variety, quite often there's not enough bitterness for me often to make it as refreshing as I want, and the malt sweetness sort of plays maybe a bit too much. And then you go over to Czech Republic around Prague, and you've got big body, big mouthfeel, big bitterness, but they also brew diacetyl that purposely into the beer. So if you were to have, for instance, if you were to find a bar that did the Tank Fresh Pilsner Urquell, I've grown to really appreciate that beer, but I never used to, because they brew diacetyl into beer, and we're trained over here to think that diacetyl is a bad character in a lager, but they do it on purpose. So they want that sort of butterscotch flavor in the lager. For me, it's not. I still find it. I still think it's quite Marmitey. Whether you either like that or you don't. But I've grown to appreciate it because I know that they do it on purpose, and I understand it's there. But then you come in, so that's like the Pilsner, but then you come in back into Germany and head to the North Germany, and you've got like really low malt body and maybe like 19 different hops. And because there's no malt sweetness there to back it up, it's almost like a metallic scrape that you get, and it's so rather than picking up the nice characters within the hops, it just feels metallic. And I've never really got the Northern German Pilsners. I've never really, the lack of balance, I've never got there. So what we kind of wanted was a little bit from each of those areas, that the bits that we liked. So we looked at the bitterness from Northern Germany, but the maltiness of Southern. We looked at there's a lot of similarities, we think, to the Czech style, but we ignore the butterscotch, So it was a little bit of everything, but the most important thing for me was that whenever we drank that beer, you felt that you were drinking something. And if you were drinking this beer, you could probably put this next to some IPAs and it'll stand right up to an IPA, because, and that's all down for me. When we mentioned the viscosity or the mouthfeel, the underarching backbone of this beer comes from the decoction mash process, and it just gives this real backbone to the beer that you can just add bitterness on top of. So you've got this sort of caramel sweetness, but it's like a perceived sweetness, it's not actual sweetness. It's like a perceived sweetness that's there, and then the bitterness sort of latches onto that.
Gets onto it. Yeah. I think there's been some great there's a whole bunch of conversations going on inside the chat room. This is a really fun chat room to see. I don't know if chat room is the right word to say, but we've got biodigestion happening in the people talking about that for the Wild Beer Company. Then there's people talking about if my hat is an emoji. Talking about what you're talking about. They're not getting bored of what you're saying. They're
yeah.
Kevin's mentioning talking about he's loving Pilsner Urquell on Tank, and I agree with him. I do get on with that beer. I really like that beer. But that flavor of diacetyl, I'm generally quite sensitive to it, but I think it works in balance on that one. Someone asked, it was a great question at the very beginning, is to talk about, and Matt here, is great to hear how you answer this as well, Will. But Matt asked if, what's the difference between lager and beer, or lager and ale? Because the flavor of this one, the maltiness of this one, he'd associate with an ale. And that's a lot of what we were just talking about. The actual flavor of the malt and the ingredients, the raw ingredients in it, is more just beer, and then lager is so what I heard, kind of the most pure and basic definition of beer, and that I've heard, that I kind of ascribe to, is a fermented grain beverage. And That's it. So it doesn't need. It's just got to have grain and water, and then you can have all other types of ingredients in there. And so that now we get a little. Now, generally, take it a little bit more specific. We got two different classifications of beer. One is ale and one is lager. And the two big distinctions there are the yeast that's used. And now in generalities here, lager yeast creates a bit cleaner, crisper, not as bold of aromatic and flavor compounds as ale, and that's a very general statement, but that's kind of, if you want a really crisp and clean, really highly drinkable beer that's going to quench your thirst, you won't go wrong with a lager. The equal statement could be said about an ale as well if you go for the right one, and if you want something that's bold and sweet or rich, often you'd go more for an ale. So those are super general statements, but the only real big difference is not about the brew day and or packaging or the ingredients other than yeast. Yeast is really the only difference between ale and lager, but they're both beer. That's how I describe the difference. Hope that's.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, please. Yeah, I'm interested to hear what you say on that as well.
Yeah. So for me, first of all, we intend to blur the lines a lot between ales and lager. For me, and then completely. The biggest difference is the yeast used. Also, the word lager is just a term for cold storing. So it's like any beer that's been cold stored. So it's been lagered. It's German for lagered. So it's called lagered, which is the beer has been cold stored. But like the best way that I've ever heard, like an analogy for describing the difference here. So and Matt, really good question. But like whenever you look at ale yeasts and lager yeast, so lager yeasts always work at the bottom of a tank in cold conditions. The ale yeast works at the top of a tank in warm conditions. The ale yeast will work in warm conditions over a period of about 2 to 3 days, and the lager yeast will work in cool conditions over about 2 weeks. So much longer time to get the fermentation happening. So the analogy that I want to use is the difference between. So say for instance, if you're heading into work, and it's on a say for instance you're yeast on your way, and you've given to do that trip, and it's a cool day. You just walk really gently, really slowly. You get there, and you're pretty much as you were when 2 hours later. Maybe you get there as you were when you left the house. But if you were an ale yeast doing that journey, it might be a warm day, and you give yourself like 10 minutes to do that journey. So you have to run as hard as you can. You're running that hard. When you get there, you might have kicked off some other aromas, which is obviously, so like an ale yeast will work much quicker, much warmer, and it'll kick off like esters that you will want in the final beer. Like sometimes maybe fruity esters, sometimes sort of spicy esters, but the flavors that you keep in the final beer. A lager yeast will work fully and cool over a much longer time and not give off. Apart from maybe like something like sulfur, but that will eventually kind of fall back into the beer again and disappear. But much slower, much cooler, and not kicking off as many flavors from the actual yeast. Whereas ale, you want that to happen and you want to get those flavors in.
Yeah. I love the aroma descriptors that you mentioned there. The ones that you kick off when you go for a run.
So it's only an analogy, not a direct comparison to ale yeasts.
Yeah. We've got someone who's saying hi to you, Will, through their girlfriend. Amy says Chris Kinwood shot your promo film.
All right, nice one. Oh yeah. Hi Chris, how's it going? Thank you very much for that. Chris Kinwood also lost his drone whenever he shot that promo film. He crashed the drone somewhere like in the Lake District when he was shooting our film. And lost it. But I think he found it again after a few hours. I had to leave him in by Lake Thirlmere looking for it. I had to go back to Manchester, so I think he found it.
Wow, yeah, that's horrible. Just to say, we got we also have a bit of love for our kitchen tiles. I think we both have similar-ish.
They were on offer.
Yeah. No, and then also just giving a little bit of a nod to some of the Wild Beer team in the chat room. So Laura's agreeing with what you say, Will. So Laura is the Wild Beer lab hobbit. She handles all the lab and microbiological stuff at the brewery. So plating up doing swabs and micro testing our beers regularly. And Sam is in the chat room as well, answering questions, having comments. He's saying there's loads of DMS in your beer, Will. What are you talking about? He's going to hate me for saying that. No.
Wait till I speak to him on Monday.
And Sam is the head brewer at the Wild Beer Company. And also Dan is there giving me grief from there's a number of more people from the Wild Beer Company in the chat room. So thank you so much, everybody who's in there answering questions and joining in and giving me flack like Dan is. I tipped my car over in the ice, and so he's giving me all types of questions about driving in the ice and putting ice in my beer. So next beer, I'm sure people are wanting to get open another one. So we're going for Chica. Chica in a very modern 440 mil. Man.
I'm gonna have to change glassware for this, aren't I?
Yeah. So you might as well get two. So those of you watching, you might want to get two glasses. I'd recommend. Sorry, I didn't say this at the beginning. I'd recommend trying Chica and TikTok just next to each other. We'll open up Chica first, talk about that one for a little bit, and then we will go into as well.
Should I pour this next to the?
Yeah. So, Will, you said yours had a CO2 volume of what?
But 2.8. I mean, I think in the last batch we requested about 3, so we send ours off for canning.
Yeah. Okay.
Because we're still only young. We've not managed to afford a £80,000 canning machine yet.
Yeah.
So we send it off and we get it canned in line as it gets canned. So we request certain levels of CO2. So we requested 2.83. So we change it. We've been changing it just to we're trying to get it just the perfect level. But yeah, it's a constant challenge trying to get the carbonation correct in the beer. But this looks good. This looks quite high.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say either our instruments are wrong, because this would be, we don't do too many things more than 2.6.
Yeah.
2.6 and really this would have been more like 2.5, I'm guessing. Off my, I don't know about this particular batch. We really try to be consistent, but plus or minus 0.05 is pretty good for us. We focus a lot on the oxygen content.
Yeah.
And then also on the CO2. Two beers particularly, it's a diversion from this beer. Sorry, everybody, but just going into the geekiness of brewing, but it does have a big impact, is our hazy IPA and our milk stout. Both of those, CO2, the amount of CO2, the amount of effervescence that's in that beer really plays a big role in how it tastes and how you perceive it. And so lowering the amount of CO2 down to sometimes as low as 2.2, where Will's was at 2.8, and this is more like 2.6. all these geeky numbers. Sorry about all that, everybody. Basically, high or low. But Sheikah.
So, like, first up, it's it's completely different beer, isn't it? Completely different. Like, I've not tasted it yet, but like lighter in body, and then the aroma is way fruitier.
Yeah. Dan's mentioning esters of banana.
I seen that banana e. Banana e.
Yeah. I gotta say, that's one that we're working on, kind of tweaking the fermentation and the amount of yeast we use. So these are all like really important elements to making lager. Lager, as Will was mentioning, there's nothing to hide in lager. You can see straight through it. No, not just that, but it's subtle changes in the temperature of the fermentation or the amount of yeast used or the yeast nutrients that are in your malt. Subtle changes in this will create more or less banana or more or less pear character or none of those at all. And so as brewers, Jane at the brewery, we were just chatting, and I said to Jane, I was like, Jane, what can we do to make our lagers better? And her very quick answer, we got to make more of them. And that's it. Like, brewers, especially in the we need to make the beers over and over so that we can subtly tweak the dials, and really find when the beer is singing. And that's it. So Sam and I have been really doing a lot of work trying to tone that fruity pear drop character down and letting the hops sing out more. Yeah,
I think that's where the challenges for us have come in, but also the positives for us have come in, because for the entire first year of the brewery, we literally only brewed one beer. I think we did two other. We did the black and we did an Oktoberfest, but like one brew of each. All the rest of the time, it was just that one lager. So I'm sure Ian, who's the brewing director, I'm sure he got so sick of brewing the lager over and over again. But I think he's got quite an analytical mind and quite a scientific mind. He's a doctor of neuroscience, and he geeks out about measuring how long it takes a protein particle to drop down through a conditioning tank. So, so he's got that sort of mind. But like, yeah, I mean, by brewing the same beer over and over, I'm not saying our beer's perfect. I just like that sort of style. But like, when you want to make that sort of style, then being able to make that week in, week out is, I guess, an advantage as well. For us, but I really like you can see exactly how different it is. This feels like a much fresher, zingier as another word, a fresher and zingier lager, and refreshing, light and fruity. I can't put my fingers on which fruit. I'm not sure banana, but it's definitely a light fruit, but I'm not too sure which light fruit.
So we, in our kind of tasting panel, which is a glorified way of us, we do it regularly, and it's a glorified way of professional tasting or drinking. But we do. I just love this comment. That's why I put it up. You're right, John. Definitely make more roast potatoes. We often get a kind of sweet pear drop type character. So it's
pear, actually, yeah. Well, yeah, I was probably going for that. So yeah, it is. Like a softer. I was going because it's not quite appley, but it's like a softer version. So yeah, pear probably fits quite well with that.
Simon's getting some very clean and crisp and zingy. We put a lot of
Andrew Cooper gets kumquat. Kumquat is good, actually. Yeah.
Or kumquat.
Kumquat.
Kumquat. Kind of banana-y. Yeah. Yeah. So one thing about our ingredients in this beer is that we use a new hop product, I guess, is probably the best way. It's not very nice sounding, maybe, called American Noble hops. And we use a good amount of them, not exclusively. We use Tettnanger and Hersbrucker as well as Mittelfrüh. But in the dry hop, we use half American Noble hop. And that is a big IPA hop called Citra or Mosaic. And the hop merchant, they actually take away all the bitterness and they leave behind this really subtle, fruity, citrusy, fruity, tropical fruit kind of charactered hop that it has the aroma impact of the noble hops. So it's us kind of playing around and experimenting with some new ingredients, and that's been working really well. But we've been finding that the traditional noble hops really shine through really well. So,
and what have you done? Because like again, we talk about viscosity, and we talk about mouthfeel earlier on. Whenever I was talking about decoction mash, and I don't think I've actually explained what we do with that yet, so we'll come on to that later. But what have you done? Because there's quite a nice mouthfeel on this. So how have you got that?
Yeah, that really we depend a lot on our maltsters. So our process here is around. We have a single temperature that we mash our grains with. So we mix our grain and our water at only one temperature, and it will convert the starch into sugar. And I know you'll go into just for the rest of the people on the show. In comparison to what we'll talk about later, he'll be able to change his temperatures. But he'll go through how he does that. We use one temperature, and that limitation puts a lot of reliance on having really good maltsters and a good selection of malt to build the flavors that Will can create through decoction. And so we use English malt that would be perfect for making an ale. But we use it for making a lager. And so that really helps kind of the residual unfermented sugar. But really just the starting out with good quality ingredients and not letting the fermentation go all the way. So having a good temperatured mash, I guess, is what we do. I'm also just thinking we just try to follow the best brewing practices we can and improve like good quality points every single day when we do it, to make the best beer, to make the best balance, I guess. How we get there, we don't have those tools that you do, really.
I think I've just seen someone actually comment, and he's probably hit the nail on the head with that one. Daniel Holly has put down peach, peach. Peach. And I guess that's probably quite right, because it's like a light fruit, but then you've got and then I think because of that sort of that mouthfeel, that sort of light kind of like there's like a light sort of, even though it's quite zingy, there is still quite a soft mouthfeel to it as well. So the peach kind of works nicely both on the flavor way and how it feels in the mouth as well. So that's good.
Yeah,
I like
that's
that.
a really good one, Dan. He's gonna love that. He drinks more cider than beer, probably.
It is definitely peach.
And Philip, let's get into Philip's question, but first, maybe let's try this before everybody finishes their. So yeah, we've got. So this is the same beer, Chica. There is a slight difference in this one, and I'll tell you that in a second. And then it's barrel aged. there's two differences, I guess. But you can see. Oh, I really should have done it in the same exact glass. But you can kind of see the color difference.
I've drank the other one. No, I've got more. I've got more.
We haven't, in all these tastings, I haven't really like just finished the so fast. Like
it's a Friday night, Brett. Come on.
Your first one, I drank it. No, not just you. No, me. I was just thinking, I drank it so fast. Wow.
Yeah. So there's like a slight like haziness to the second one, obviously from the time in barrels, but only slightly. And the smell is like a marked difference, isn't it?
And there should be some color difference for those who might have it in the same glass. It should be a bit richer in color, darker in color, maybe in between Will's Manchester Union and Chica, kind of right in between there. Just to say, Philip, we use a great deal of hops in Chica as well as in TikTok. It's the same hops, but the selection of which hops we use plays a huge role. So, sorry, all this gas is coming up. So a hop like Hallertau or Mittelfrüh is significantly less punchy, less aromatic than Mosaic or Citra, as I described earlier. They're night and day difference in the amount of fruit and the intense bitterness that comes from the Mosaic and Citra versus the Hallertau or Mittelfrüh. And that would be a traditional lager hop versus a typical IPA hop. That's a big difference just there. So TikTok, what we started this whole evening for. So the big difference between TikTok and Chica is that it's barrel aged. The second difference is that we used probably about 95% German Pilsner malt as well, and that is from Weyermann Pilsner malt. So we wanted to see what that character was going to give us and bring. And one element that it did was that it fermented the beer a whole lot more. It was a lot more fermentable, and it ended up being like, is it 5.2, 5.4 on TikTok versus I think 4.7 on Chica. So it's the same amount of ingredients in those, but the yeast consumed more. But yet, because this is barrel aged, it's probably got a bigger body.
Yeah. There's
Oh man.
And there's a really nice
Wow.
Like I think I've said it before to you, but it feels almost like a nice level of acidity behind it. But it's not quite acidity, it's something else. And I can't remember what we talked about. Someone else said wood, I think, last time. But yeah, there's something else there that reminds me of acidity, but it isn't quite acidity.
Okay. I don't know.
But it's not for me. It's not. Well, you know, I like acidity in drinks, and for me, it's really pleasant, and I can see it then working with food in ways that maybe Chica definitely can work with food, but this can absolutely work with food in ways that are different to what Chica is, and that's and just coming from that time in barrels, that's it's nice. And or maybe it's just it's like the tannins from the barrels.
Yeah,
I'm picking up as acidity.
The kind of crispness, the tannin, bitter. Like I kind of often get tannin as it's a different type of bitterness, and in a beer like this, the tannin almost like builds the body rather than thins it out. Where sometimes in barrel aging beers, it can thin it out. But that tasting TikTok right next to Sheikah, next to yours, really shows off how much wood character is coming out of that. It was asked what kind of barrel it was in. This is in a French red wine barrel from Burgundy, and
Did you pick Burgundy barrels for any particular characteristic, or were you just wanting to experiment with a red wine barrel, or was Burgundy a thing?
No, we've used a lot of Burgundy barrels. There's partly because we have such a good source for them. We have a winemaking friend who a supplier who's a winemaker who lives in England and has a winery in France. And he actually supplies a number of wine barrels to breweries. So if you're interested, I'm sure we can connect you. But it does take a lot of work to age them in barrels, and you don't get a lot for it.
I think that's a different challenge for a different year for Manchester Union.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. I think it's a delightful beer. I think it's lovely.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Cheers. Why did we choose that barrel? There is, with barrel aging beer, so we have about 500 oak barrels at the brewery right now with beer in them, and they have come from different suppliers. And an oak barrel is a really easy thing to get wrong, and it can get damaged in transit. It can be really old and leaking. It can have bacteria or yeast in it that's not very good for aging beer, and often that actually comes down to different suppliers. Some suppliers are better than others, and so when we found a supplier that is really consistent, we've tried to stick with them and support them.
Yeah.
And keep them. And so I would much rather have all of my barrels be Burgundy red wine barrels or white wine barrels from this supplier than having a hit and miss type experience with other people. He just does a really good job at sourcing them and helping us out and giving us tips and pointers on aging. We don't have wine, but he ages wine in them by aging liquid in them and all that. So it's a good experience.
Good. Cool.
Yeah. We actually today, I think, pretty sure I'm correct on this. Today we have filled the barrels that we aged this in. We emptied and we just filled those up with a really strong imperial stout, and that's going to go into a beer called Babs for next year. So that's today. That was what was going on in the brewery today, along with brewing millionaire and packaging millionaire. It was a good day today. Lots of stuff going on.
Good. So what I would like to do at some point then is send down some of our beer and see what we can do with it, with aging it in some barrels down in your barrel store for a bit. Yeah, because we wouldn't have the facility to do that, so it'd be quite cool. It'd be quite cool to work with you guys on that. But we'll pick up with that on Monday morning as well.
Yeah, we can work on this. Yeah. I don't see why not. I like this idea. Like, I can't guarantee that it won't get infected.
Well, that might be interesting as well.
We'll work on that.
Yeah.
That was that's actually a really good thing to talk about or say. So one purpose for doing this beer called TikTok was to see if so working with bacteria and wild yeast like we do with some of our sour and wild beer. Those are mostly in oak barrels, and working with those is very similar to kind of working with raw chicken and then wanting to prepare a salad. You need to clean really well, and you need to make sure you don't cross-contaminate using the same equipment or not cleaning. And it's been expected and said to, if you have a wild yeast and bacteria barrel aging program, you probably don't want to have any what you want clean beer aging alongside it.
Sorry, Brett.
Yeah.
Can I come back to you in just 1 second? Just gotta.
Yeah.
I'll be back in 1 second.
No worries. So we wouldn't want to cross-contaminate it, and it was a bit of a concern. And so the thing with TikTok was we wanted to see, could we do this? Could we make a clean beer in oak barrels near or in the same facility as our wild, spontaneous, bacteria-filled barrels of beer? And so Laura, the lab hobbit, James, the barrel wrangler, those two worked really closely at checking in on the beer week to week. Laura has done probably about 40 different kind of microbiological swabbing and plating up on petri dishes, one for each barrel multiple times. And so
apologies for that. It was an Amazon Prime delivery.
Oh, really?
Sorry.
No, it's fine. No, it's just saying that this whole experiment and test has gone through and actually worked and Laura has checked this beer to the nth degree. This is like one batch of beer. It's probably had like 40 different micro platings, on petri dishes, which is way more than we would normally do. So pretty cool. Everybody's wondering, what did you get what you wanted?
I think so. Yeah. I'll put my frozen peas away in a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. Should we get onto the dark lager?
Well, before we do, so I think have you still got some TikTok left? Because we can enjoy that while we talk about the decoction mash process. So before we crack open the dark lager, keep drinking the TikTok, and we'll talk it through. So what you do to get a little bit of more depth and mouthfeel into our viscosity, as was it Matt that said earlier, into TikTok, you rely on the tannins from the red wine barrels to help develop that, I guess, a little bit as well. So the one thing that kind of surprised me whenever I first talked to Ian about what is now our lager, was he was talking about decoction mash brewing, and this was like in 2015, and I genuinely hadn't heard of it before. I think if I had heard of it, it was just something that I knew had like an old way of brewing, and the reason why it was an old way of brewing, it was down to like a way of working per quality malt to make it useful for brewing. But so everyone always said you don't need to use the decoction mash technique because we have good malt nowadays. And it's completely true that you don't need to use decoction mash brewing to be able to brew, because you can brew without using decoction mash brewing. But just a little bit about what decoction is. If you go back to like centuries ago, when hundreds of years ago anyway, centuries ago, and what they would do is, and again, they didn't have thermometers, so what they would do is they would work out, so they would take the beer up to a certain temperature, but then take maybe 30% of the mash, so the liquid and the grains and everything, take it to a separate tank, and then fire that up so that it would get to boiling temperature. So it would start boiling, and then they would know that once they add, like, say 30%, that 30% back into the full thing, it would take the temperature up in a step. And in that step, you might get like the protein rest, you get the acid rest, you do all that in different temperatures. And what they actually did in Czech Republic was they would do that 3 times. So they would, so called triple decoction. So they would take 30% of the mash out into a separate tank, boil that up, and then drop that back into the main tank, and then take 30% out again, boil that up, and then drop that in. It would step up the temperature again, and then do it like a 3rd time, and that might go from like 50 to 60 up to 77 degrees. So it would do it in different steps. But so yes, you don't need to do that anymore. But what that did do is that process of boiling it up to 100 degrees. And bear in mind, like during a normal brew day, everything in your tanks doesn't get above, like, say 77, does it? So so whenever you have a part of the brew house that's got the liquid and the mash, and bear in mind the grist as well, and like all the the husks within the grain, and that's going as well. So like that moves around our brew house through, and we have pumps from a jam factory to move that that sort of thick malty base into so it has to move it all through. So really powerful. We were shocked whenever our first, like, one of the pumps went maybe about a month into the brewery launching, and we had to replace the pump, and it was like $9,500 just to replace one pump, because that pump is a serious pump. It has to move like this sort of like thick porridge almost into a different tank. So really hard working. But then what you get whenever you boil that up to like 100 degrees, you get a couple of things. You get like, just like frying a steak or toasting marshmallows, you get that sort of caramelization, but it's called the Maillard reaction. So it's like when reducing amino acids meet heat, and then you've got this, it releases a couple of things. So but melanoidin is pretty much the same, is like what we get that gives us a sort of silky mouthfeel while still maintaining like a dryness. So not only do you get like a silky mouthfeel, but then you also then you have like a small release of tannins as well, again because of those husks that you've got in there. So for us, when we want the lager to remain dry, this is the only way that we can do it, to get body and mouthfeel into the beer and get this sort of silky mouthfeel with the melanoidin without adding loads more malt and add sweetness into the beer. We want this to stay dry. Even though it's got a perceived sweetness, we want it to stay dry and give us that dryness, but then also keep the or build like a big mouthfeel as well. So I remember, I remember whenever we were trying to work out how we were going to do the brewery and how we were going to get the brewery, and we went over to Czech Republic to talk to a brewery manufacturer in the Czech Republic to make us the brew house that we wanted. And Ian had a very clear idea in his head how he wanted the brew house to work. And like we mashed directly into the copper, for instance. We only go into the mash tun just for lightering. So we kind of skip the mash tun at the start, mash straight into the copper, then decoct out of that into the decoction vessel, back into the copper, and then out to the mash tun for the sparging. Then back into the copper. So we had to get our kit made like bespoke, and then so we went to Czech Republic. Then we couldn't get the asset finance company to work with the Czech company that we were talking to. So then we were dealing with a Hungarian company, trying to get them to make the kit. Then that didn't work. So we're talking to a Chinese company, and we couldn't get it over quick enough. And then we're talking to a Canadian company. And I remember the sales guy from the Canadian company just having to go at Ian and saying, "You don't have to do this, Ian. You don't have to make beer this way." And Ian was like, "But I want to. So and then we ended up, after going all these different places, we ended up finding a brewery manufacturer in Bury. in Bury, which is just like North Manchester. So he makes like he makes some like brewery kits for, you know, I think he did some of Tiny Rebel stuff. He did like Vocation. He did like Thwaites' old stuff. But he also used to build submarines. So I think the engineering part of him just gave him like enough engineering curiosity to want to make the kit that we wanted it to be made. So yeah, really important for us that we just have this body and mouthfeel or viscosity that sort of elevates the drinking experience of the beer. And the reason why I labored the point on this is because of the next beer. So whenever we went over to the Czech Republic for that trip, every one of us was just drinking the black lagers there. Everyone just kept going back to black lagers, and we just kept saying, like, how good would it be to be able to make this beer in the UK? But we never believed that people in the UK would get black lagers like the Czechs get it. You know, the Czechs love black lagers, but we're just like, but it's so good. But like, we just never really thought that people would get it. So we've been really surprised this time around. We brewed it about a year ago, back when we only did draft beer. And then and we couldn't really get it out to many people because we didn't have any cans. So we only did it on draft. And then since lockdown, and we've had to put beer in cans, we've since brewed the black lager. And yeah, it's been really well received. So we're really proud of it. But because of that sort of that decoction method, it adds body and mouthfeel and depth to the beer that makes it almost feel like a stout. So I'll stop rabbiting on, and people can go grab their black lager, and let's all try it together.
I think the main thing that people took away from that was that there was north of Manchester. That's the main thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it goes kind of Manchester and then Scotland, doesn't it? I think there's nothing much above that.
Yeah. No, I think that's I wish we could do a decoction, and I wish we could do that and create, to have that ability and that tool in your tool chest is incredible. To be able to do that. If we put some barrels, we got to come up and try to make something on your brew kit. Well, we'll have to do some swapsies or something.
Yeah, I don't think Ian is always happy that he has the decoction capability, because it probably adds about 3 hours to a brew day.
Yeah, let's pour the black one, and I want to ask about that, like how long that takes, other than just 3 hours, longer. But I'm gonna pour the dark one. Are you happy about that? Some people asked if there was any pouring tips.
Oh, sorry, I lost you for a second there.
Oh no!
You went to a little bit. Yeah, 1 second. I'm just going to make sure that my.
No, don't worry.
I think we're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's better.
So I was just asking if we were gonna. Some people asked if there was any pouring tips for the dark one.
No, with this one, with this one, it's just the same as the Manchester Union. So you can go maybe a little bit slower with the pour on this one, because of that sort of the darker malts. You've got like a slightly thicker viscosity to this anyway, so you can pour this a little bit gentler, and it'll still grate. 1 second.
Maybe that was too gentle.
No, that's good. That's good.
Oh man, there's so much in there.
Yeah.
Oh,
now,
man,
so the interesting thing about this one is everything is exactly the same as our lager, except for maybe 5%. Well, there's a couple of extra amber malts in there, there's about 5-6% that is black malt. Then all the rest are pale malts. So this is, the hops are the same, the water's the same, the process is the same, everything's the same. But there's about 5-6% black malt. There's a couple of changes with a small amount of like amber malt, which won't really impact the appearance so much because of the black. But overall, if you assume that the only difference really between this and the other lager is about 5-6% of the malt bill, it's just insane the difference that makes. And then you've got this like huge step change in the flavors, and even though the hops are the same as well, you just have more. So you've got like coffee, you've got chocolate, and you've got like dark fruits like raisin. And I think you were picking out blueberries before as well. But for me, absolutely raisin, absolutely coffee, and absolutely chocolate.
Yeah.
And then because you've got that big decoction mash process, I think the decoction mash, while also having the dark malts in there, almost accentuates that body and that melanoidin release, and it just seems to accentuate everything to like a much bigger degree, and it becomes a much bigger beer than what we probably even anticipated.
It's a big difference. Those subtle tweaks on that malt have done. And you did. Sorry if you said this, but you did decoct. Do you decoct all of your beers?
Yeah, we're about to launch a pale ale, but that pale ale is so it uses ale yeast, but with lager Pilsner malt and Central European lager style hops.
Right.
With that pale, we didn't decoct that, but everything else we decoct. Yeah.
Here's some of the tasting notes. Some people here. I expected it to be so much bigger than 4.5. 4.5% alcohol. I totally agree. I didn't realize it was. When I tasted it earlier, when we were on the phone, I thought it was going to be like 5.5, 5.2, something like this.
Yeah. The first time we brewed this beer was actually about 4.2, and it still tasted like a giant beer. What I can't wait to do, and we are going to do it at some point during the summer, is a proper double bock. So can you imagine this beer but brewed to about 8%?
Oh man.
It's gonna be that should be really good.
Yeah.
And that'll just have like bags of like raisin, big deep fruit, raisin, like prune sort of characters. It's gonna be nice. Yeah.
Dutch licorice chocks. I don't know.
Yeah, you probably get a little hint of licorice. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely. I don't know if I've had those, but it definitely. I think I can imagine what they are. Some people are loving this idea. Bring it on. Bring on the 8%. Doesn't matter what it is. Just bring it on. Just bring on 8%. Yeah. No, I find it just really complex. And I got like just in comparison to the lager, the lager that it was just a bit sharper.
Sorry, I don't know if it's just me. I'm losing losing your signal a tiny bit. I don't know if it's just me. It could be.
I might just check on something real quick. Bear with me just a sec, Will. Bear with me. I'm going to just check the internet real quick. Hang on a sec. Can you talk about the logo? Because I wanted to ask you about that, and I can listen to what you're talking about. Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Where that came from?
Yeah. So Manchester. So Manchester's pretty famous for. Well, if you're in Manchester, you know about the bee links, but the bee is not probably what you think. Manchester was, I guess they called it the cradle of the Industrial Revolution. So, so people referred to Manchester back when it was full of cotton mills and coal mines and stuff, as people referred to it as the worker bees of Britain. So, I think back then probably Manchester didn't really like the idea of the term of being a worker bee population. They kind of saw that as quite a negative view of what Manchester was, so that it wasn't really an embraced image. But I think now people embrace the idea of the bees of Manchester as, you know, the working part of the UK. So if you walk around Manchester, you see lots of images of bees, and you know, if you're there, you see that it's overdone a lot. So the bees everywhere, and people just keep using it within branding and all sorts. So we didn't want to just do a bee, but we wanted to have a nod towards it. And then, you know, we were looking at and bear in mind, you know, at this time it was taking us, say, 3 years just to get off the ground. So during those 3 years, we just, like, every time we had a problem, if it was a problem that meant that we had to stop a certain approach, it was like right the way back to the drawing board again. We weren't just going to get it. We weren't just going to open a brewery at all costs. We had to do it right for what we wanted. So, and we never wanted to compromise on how we wanted to make the beer. So, so one thing that really resonated with us was part of the coat of arms of Manchester. It was sort of concilio e labore, which was wisdom and effort. So it wasn't just the effort of the bee; it was the wisdom as well. So, so we that kind of really resonated with us. That the effort's cool, the worker bee is cool, but it was nothing without really understanding what we wanted to be. So we kind of wanted it to be a blend of both the effort and the wisdom. So. So we figured, well, how can we do that? And in that coat of arms, there was a few different things, but one of the things was a lion. So we took the lion to be the wisdom part, and we took the bee to be the effort part. And because we're very Central European, we just thought, well, let's keep it quite Germanic, and all the sort of Central European emblems and coat of arms, and they've got like big lions and tigers holding flags and stuff. So we that was the influence really. But we made it a lion bee. So it's a lion bee holding a big Germanic flag, and it's kind of half lion, half bee. And the lion drawing, the drawing that we've got is a lot better than the first one that I did. I just drew a bee with a lion's head on it, and it didn't look good. So yeah, luckily we got someone else to make the new logo for us. But you know, we're very proud of the lion bee. We really like it. So, and I think everyone that Bumble Lion, and I think everyone that got a kit also got one of our little badges. So we sent down some badges for you guys as well. So like overall, we want to kind of eventually we want that the lion bee to be recognized as the brewery. So without even having to write Manchester Union Brewery, we just want the lion bee to be known. So, but thank you for picking that out.
Yeah, I really like it. I think it's brilliant. I like it a lot. It would make a great tattoo. I think it would make a great tattoo. Maybe one day. How's that connection doing now, Will? Is that okay?
It was for me it was dropping out a wee bit, but it could be mine. I'm just doing a check on my internet speed. It says I'm blazing fast, so okay. I'm guessing it's yours.
I don't know, because I had some other people saying they could hear both of us. So, but
okay.
Yeah, we got someone already saying they'd get that tattoo. I think they just need,
good.
They just need your sponsorship for that, probably.
Well, we can look at that.
As he scratches the back of his head.
It depends on what sort of sponsorship. I mean, we could do a few cans.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
It would be the first one, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, I'm wondering if I think there has been a wild beard tattoo. think there's been one. But
I almost think that would be the day that we know we've made it, when someone's tattooed a lion bee on them.
I don't know. I don't feel like I've made it, and I think they've.
Not that I'm trying to encourage it.
We're enjoying it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Will, this is you've got also one. You've got some new stuff coming out as well. You have kind of like a rotation and a rhythm that's going to happen. And we've got some stuff coming. And we try to do things regularly, sporadically, regularly. But what are you guys? You guys have some stuff coming?
Yeah, so that pale comes out. I'm quite excited about that one. That comes out next week. We're trying to keep it. A lot of the stuff that we do is maybe not the exciting kind of trend beers. So we're not brewing like big dippers. We seem to. Well, we seem to stick to the sort of Central European mid 4%. So nothing crazy. Although I can't wait till we brew that 8% double bock. But since lockdown, and we're looking at having variety to send to our local customers. We do like a self delivery to local customers around Manchester. So we wanted to create more variety for that. So a pale ale was a natural progression, but we wanted to do a pale ale that had a lager influence. So rather than doing an ale that was lagered, we made an ale with lager ingredients. So we did, using Pilsner malt, using Hallertau Mandarina hops, using and chilling it as well on like a cool ferment as well. But we're going to brew a double bock, which I can't wait. But before we brew the double bock, we're going to brew a beer that I'm really excited about. So it's going to be like an evolution of the red lager that we did last year with Mike Murphy from Lervig. So we brewed a red lager with him using Red X malt, Herzbrucker and Aurora hop. So both those hops have like a nice little sort of citrus line. And then with the Red X malt, you've got like almost a sort of, an obvious sort of caramel, this real kind of caramel backbone. But then once we cock that and then add that with the citrus, it almost has little hints of cola cubes. And Ian the brewer hates me to say this because he's quite a traditionalist. So having a beer that tastes like cola cubes is not what he would intend. But to me, I just get this sort of caramel citrus thing, and it just hits like this little pops of cola cube. No, it doesn't just taste of cola cube, but it has just little hints and just reminds me of it, and I love it. So what we're going to do with that beer, so we're going to take it, because back then that was like a 3.7% lager, red lager, but we're going to bring that up to like mid fours again, maybe 4.7, and we're going to brew it with an ale yeast, but we're going to lager it. So we're going to get it on chill and let it just kind of dull down those sort of ale flavors. So it's going to be a bit like an alt beer, but not an alt beer. Maybe taking some influences from like a steam beer, but obviously it's not a steam beer. So we don't really know what we're going to call it. We'll probably just end up calling it an alt beer. But yeah, I'm really excited about that one. I can't wait till that one comes out. But they're all gonna take. There's always gonna be a little nod towards lager in all the beers that we do. So we are a lager brewery first and foremost.
Yeah, that's good. Hey, we had a food question, food pairing one for this for the dark lager. What kind of snack? What kind of meal? What types of
If you've ever been to a Mexican restaurant and had something spicy with a Negro Modelo, you will know how good black lagers work with spicy food. It's just like a marriage made in heaven. So you've got like this kind of like dark fruit and chocolate backbone running through, and and then the little, like a nice sort of caramelly sweetness that kind of dulls down any spice. With this one, you're going to have a little bit of bitterness there that will kind of almost lift the spice a bit as well. But the chocolate, you know, like bits of this will almost do what a mole does with Mexican food as well. That sort of chocolatey, you know, syrupy. So I would definitely say this with something chocolatey. You could also pair it with like any sort of cheese that has a slight bit of blue in it, you know, so a nice bit of that'd be quite good. But yeah, spicy food. You just like, once you pair this with spicy food, it's like, I know you really like it whenever a beer and food combination changes, like a drink changes the way the food tastes. So if you have this with some spicy Mexican, it definitely does that. It changes the way it all tastes. It's pretty good.
I wouldn't have thought of it, but then now that you say that, that takes me back to one of my all-time like beer memories is hanging out with my cousin, and she introduced me to Negro Modelo, and we also, her and I and her family, we eat lots of Mexican food, and so I just hadn't ever connected that. I connected always to her rather than her and the food that we had, and Negro Modelo and Mexican food, and then also now your dark lager and Mexican food. So I have a tortilla chip challenge. I've got to do, and I might just have the other can of this tomorrow while trying to figure out how to construct something out of tortilla chips. That's a little wild beer inside joke going on, but not quite joke, but kind of. Yeah. So spicy food, Mexican food.
Yeah, I mean, you could have it with like a light chocolate dessert as well. But I would say if you want to have something that's going to be entertaining while you eat, it'll be definitely spicy Mexican, sort of that sort of thing. Yeah.
There has been a lot of other good, like what's its, pickled onion, lots of other just miscellaneous ones. But I don't know if these are comments going into other threads of conversation. I can't really see that, but I'm sure they sound good.
Space Raiders for the win. I'd go with Space Raiders. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but Will, we've tasted all the beers. Thank you so much for sharing so much of your stories, your process, and everything.
No, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. We're getting through this crazy COVID time together as a beer industry, as friends. So thank you so much, and everybody watching and taking part. Thank you for helping both of our breweries keep moving along in this time. You can feel a bit muddy and sludgy, like your feet are stuck, but we're moving one step at a time. And thank you for being part of that, and that this has been good for you guys as well. So the feedback has been that, and we love doing these live tastings. And part of that is we wanted to, for all of you who joined tonight, all of you who have purchased tonight's box, you should be getting an email from Liv or from the Wild Beer Company, just saying thank you for being in, but also offering, part of that is just a gift. Like if you liked the two wild beers, TikTok and Chica, there's an extra 15% off for those two beers if you liked those and wanted to get some more. So thank you very much for that. That was a thank you from us at Wild Beer for joining in. As well as there's another, we have it's payday right, or just around now, today probably for a lot of people. And we put together a quick little bundle of, if you wanted to kind of excite your taste buds and try a bunch of different things, there's a pack of beer mixed case that it's all ends up being about 35% off.
Is Somerset Wild on that, in that mixed case?
No, it's not.
So you need anyone who's listening now and wants to order something from Wild Beer, definitely get. So, well, my favorite overall is Modus Operandi. So,
Yeah.
is that on the case?
No, I don't think so.
But
40. I think it's a 12
but
450 cans.
I had Somerset Wild for the first time in a long time, just 2 days ago, and I forgot how spectacular that beer was. So anyone who's listening and fancies going on to Wild Beer site, Somerset Wild. But am I right? So this is a spontaneously fermented beer with local yeast around the brewery. I'm guessing just like from that will come from like the apple orchards and stuff near the brewery.
Yeah, uh, it's not quite spontaneous, but it is from wild yeast that is around the brewery. So we had harvested that yeast off of apples from Dan Holly, who commented earlier, from his back garden, not his orchard, but his back garden.
Right. It was incredible. So like there's no apples in the actual beer.
No,
because it just tasted like scrumpy. It was so good. It tasted like a really good. I'm probably not doing it justice by calling it a scrumpy, but it was sensational. It just had these big, massive hits of apple. Really, really good.
No, I think down here in Somerset, scrumpy is not a bad word. Scrumpy.
No, it was so good. I've not had that beer in a long time, so yeah, anyone who fancies getting onto Wild Beer and trying that's my recommendation. You can thank me. You can thank me all later.
Yeah, and then there's a good one saying Zintuki is way better than Somerset Wild. So
Zintuki is really good, but it's part Somerset Wild.
That's right. So
I know my shit.
Yeah, you do. But also, so that's the beauty of blending, and that's the beauty of what we do at the Wild Beer Company. Is we take one of our to us it's iconic. One of our key beers is Ninkasi Celebration Apple Saison. And we blend it with Somerset Wild. So it's about 70% Ninkasi and 30% Somerset Wild. Blending that together brings some sharpness and some acidity to that beer. It heightens up that apple character, makes it very kind of tart, crisp, green apple kind of character. Really beautiful. So you could get all three of those ones, Somerset Wild, Zintuki, and Ninkasi, as a great kind of like tasting pack and flavor experience. So, but
is that also on that 30% discount pack?
I don't know. I doubt it. Yeah,
you need to make a new discount pack.
Oh yes. Well, Olivia, are you listening? The tasting pack is a payday bundle. It ends up being like 30% off all those beers if you got them individually, but or something like that. That was just the one that I thought was an appropriate one to share with tonight. One. But yeah, but that's all I got for tonight. And thank you so much, Will.
Thank you for having me. I loved it, and I loved I love both the lagers, but I really especially like TikTok. I thought that was really interesting. I could see that really working with food as well. So I loved it.
Thank you very much for your excellent lagers. The body and the drinkability. Yours was the one I finished fastest. I want another one, but my wife has had it. So
that's good.
And get some more from the brewery, I think. So she's enjoyed it. But everybody, Thank you for joining in and making tonight enjoyable and warm. Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for having me.